Fresh concerns about long-term housing targets. Calls for LegCo probe into free TV licence controversy. And the mayor of Nanjing sacked amid crackdown on corruption.
Good evening. Secretary for Development Paul Chan admitted today the government has failed to secure enough land so far to meet the long-term housing target of 470,000 flats. There is now a discrepancy of up to 70,000 units. Joel De Silva has our top story.
The Long-Term Housing Strategy Steering Committee earlier unveiled a target of 470,000 units in 10 years, 60% of which would be public housing. The government has yet to adopt the recommendations, but the development chief admitted that, as of now, it does not have enough land.
Well, in terms of land supply, we have basically secured all the land necessary for implementing the targets as announced in the policy address. But as you know, the figure indicated in the consultation paper is much higher than those indicated in the policy address. The difference is about 60,000 to 70,000 units.
Chan said a number of sites that could be considered for rezoning for development into housing areas have already been identified. But he said the bigger challenge will be to get approval for these plans at the district level. Reacting to Chan's comments this afternoon, Secretary for Transport and Housing Anthony Cheung concurred that if the government is to adopt that target, it will need to gather support from the wider community.
Now, this is, of course, a very big challenge to the government and also to the community, because at the end of the day, the government has to secure community support in order to develop new land and also to fully make the best use of existing land.
Some of the sites that could be rezoned for housing include land under short-term tenancies and greenbelt areas. So-called greenbelt areas are intended to protect sites of ecological value, including Hong Kong's much-cherished country parks, which Secretary for Development Paul Chan earlier suggested could be used to build new flats. Needless to say, the suggestion itself resulted in public outcry. Joel De Silva, TVB News.
Well, green groups and residents think the government should compensate villagers if it moves them out to protect country parks. But as Vicky Kong reports, trying to find a balance between protecting the rights of villagers and preserving Hong Kong's green heritage is proving difficult.
A forum in Sai Kung debated ways to conserve Hong Kong's country parks while protecting the rights of indigenous villagers.
The real problem is that, again, government is trying to do this on the cheap, conservation on the cheap. They refuse to compensate the villagers and they refuse to protect the country parks. Therefore, both sides will lose.
Participants agreed that villagers should be compensated if they're forced to move as part of efforts to preserve country parks. But environmental groups pointed out that some inhabitants have abused their ding rights, which gives adult male villagers the right to own small houses on government land.
The government has to come clean and stop illegal practices for villagers to use their ding rights and sell the ding rights to developers.
Concerned groups accused some developers of buying up and destroying unsown enclaves next to country parks to build luxurious villas. Some people think the Lands Department should bear the biggest responsibility for this.
Whenever people complain to the government about some illegal development, most of the time, police will come first. And the Lands Department will come in another 2 days or never show up.
Green activists also criticized the town planning board for approving land use changes that allow developers to build houses in Hoi Ha. Vicky Kong, TVB News.
There are now calls to invoke special LegCo powers to look into the controversy involving free-to-air TV. A government decision to deny businessman Ricky Wong's TV venture a license continued to spark controversy. Ronnie Samtani has more details.
Lawmakers are taking action as they question the Executive Council's decision to grant only 2 free-to-air TV licenses. Pan-Democrats plan to invoke the Legislative Council Powers and Privileges Ordinance at a special broadcasting panel meeting on November 8th to demand that EXCO release the relevant documents. Lawmaker Charles Mock says at the panel there are about 9 votes in favor of invoking special LegCo powers. He hopes that other members will vote in support. But members for the Democratic Alliance for the Betterment and Progress of Hong Kong have expressed reservations. Tam Yu Chung said they would meet with the government first before deciding whether any follow-up work is necessary. But it's not clear yet if LegCo powers and privileges would be able to override EXCO's confidentiality rules because of a lack of precedent. Civic Party member Ronnie Tong says EXCO could fight back.
For example, in EXCO, people may be inhibited from speaking their mind if they know that ultimately the deliberation will be revealed to the public. So I can see that if LegCo were to exercise its power under the Power and Privileges Ordinance to require disclosure of material of EXCO, the government may well seek to claim public interest privilege, in which case the matter will have to go to court.
Executive Council member Bernard Chan says the Council went through lengthy discussions to come to a final decision, and that a public discussion on the matter would not be possible. The decision to deny Ricky Wong and Hong Kong Television Network a license continued to spark controversy. Today, professionals in the movie industry cried foul.
We all gave our opinion that this is a setback to the creative industry because television production has always been at the cradle of the film industry, people, including a lot of superstars, they all come from TV.
Protests are scheduled for tomorrow in support of Wong and HKTV. Rani Samtani, TVB News.
On the mainland, the mayor of Nanjing has been fired in another high-profile case involving a top Chinese government official. State media said that Ji Jianye, also a deputy party chief of Nanjing, was dismissed from his leadership positions on suspicion of serious violations of party discipline. Xinhua offered no other details, but the charge usually means corrupt acts such as taking bribes, embezzlement and abuse of power. The dismissal came 2 days after the party's corruption watchdog, the Central Commission for Discipline Inspection, revealed that Ji was placed under internal investigation.
Maldives police have defended their move to stop presidential elections that were supposed to take place today. They insist that a vote would have been unlawful and could have sparked national instability. It's the latest blow to the country in the Indian Ocean, which has about 3 weeks before the end of the current president's term. If his replacement is not elected by then, it will spark a constitutional crisis. The country's top court annulled the results of the September 7th presidential election. It agreed with a losing candidate that the voters' registry included fictitious names and dead people. But it did set conditions for a revote, which police said election officials did not meet.
Well, the international community is still trying to make sense of Saudi Arabia's decision to reject a seat on the United Nations Security Council. Some say the unprecedented move was directed at the Saudis' ally, the United States, over their differences in regional hotspots such as Syria and Egypt.
Colleagues with long memories cannot recall such an instance, but they are checking back further into the depths of history to see, to be absolutely certain about that.
The announcement, read on Saudi television, came after the country was named a non-permanent member of the Security Council for the first time. Diplomats say the Saudis were lobbying for support right up until Thursday's vote. Well, staying with the Middle East now, and a group of Syrian rebels claim responsibility for a suicide bomb attack on an army checkpoint near Damascus today. Syrian state media confirmed the attack, which left at least 16 people dead. As the fighting rages on, aid workers are appealing to all combatants to stop the kidnappings, which is becoming a feature of this brutal civil war.
9 Shiite pilgrims from Lebanon were freed overnight as part of a negotiated hostage deal that could see 2 Turkish pilots held by Lebanese militants released in return. It's apparently part of a 3-way deal, which could potentially include the release of female prisoners held by Syrian authorities. The pilgrims were part of a group of 11 hostages taken by a rebel group in northern Syria in May 2012. 2 were quickly released, but the 9 have been held since, causing friction with the Lebanese government and prompting the kidnapping of the 2 Turkish nationals in August. In another kidnapping case connected with the civil war, the head of the Red Cross in Syria appealed for the release of 3 medical aid workers who remain captive.
It is clear that if this situation is not resolved, it will affect negatively the aid we are trying to bring to the Syrian people. We need safety and security for our staff to be able to reach out, whether it's in the field of water or health or food, to the people who need us.
They were taken hostage last Sunday alongside 4 others who have since been freed. The international community has appealed to the government and rebels to allow aid workers safe passage to help civilians caught up in the fighting. Also in Syria, a public funeral was held for a leading general who was killed in the middle of a battle with rebel forces. And amidst the death and the fighting, the work of the inspectors goes on, with a team of experts visiting more sites as Syria begins getting rid of its chemical weapons.
And still ahead in our newscast, Pan-Democrat rejects claims of discrimination against mainlanders. The Cardinals book World Series ticket. And still have your appetite eating in this restaurant?